Okay, yeah, this is a really good question. I'll probably conclude with this one. My question is about something I've been thinking about for a long time, and that is the fact that there's so much repetition in the Quran. Not just talking about certain surahs like Qamar, Rahman, like فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ is repeated so much, where Allah keeps repeating certain ayahs over and over again, but also also theme-wise, like the subject of the afterlife or heaven and hell or denial of prophets, which are reiterated so often in virtually every other surah. Since the Quran is the last word of God, revealed to humanity and the last communication He has with us until the Day of Judgment, how come the Quran, even within itself, is so full of repetition, while the length of the book is also, compared to other scriptures, not that long? It's a really good question, and it's a very fundamental question, and I think it's a very logical question also. So the way I'd like to address this is that we think of the Quran as a book, but actually its first relationship with us is not that of a book, it's actually that of a reminder. And you know how you and I, human beings, tend to forget things a lot? The Quran is not supposed to be read as a book of information. It's supposed to be something you engage in every day, and it reminds you of things that you need to be most aware of on a daily basis. So the things that you need to be most aware of and most reminded of are the things that are repeated the most. So Allah repeats things in order of priority of what you need to benefit from continuously. So فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ فَعَتِ الذِّكْرَ, remind, because reminder contains benefit. The fact that the Quran is supposed to be recited in prayer, recited, even spiritually, just recited out of, reverence. Every time you recite it, there are certain concepts that become, even though theoretically you know them, there is an afterlife. Of course, you and I know there's a heaven and a hell. But then the way Allah talks about it sometimes, and the way He repeats it, it shakes you to your core sometimes, like you've never heard it before. How many people have been studying Quran for ages and ages, and then they hear the Quran being recited in prayer and they bawl in tears, even though they know the information? That reminder has an effect. The same way in life, there are some bits of advice that you just need at certain times, even though you know that information. The human mind can remember, but the heart forgets, and the heart needs reminder. And the Quran actually came لَذِكْرَى لِمَنْ كَانَ لَهُ قَلْبٌ. It came as a powerful reminder for those who possess a heart. So it's actually a spiritual necessity that the Quran repeats itself in the way that it does. Now, having said that, that's probably my primary response to that question. But my secondary response to that question has to do with the fact that when I'm not just a student of the meanings and the language of the Quran, but also of the style of the Quran, the structure of the Quran. And I've come to the conclusion that actually every surah of the Quran, let's just say every main Meccan surah of the Quran, which revolves around faith issues, belief in prophets, the afterlife, the destruction of nations, certain lessons from history, the creative signs of Allah. There are only 5 or 6 major themes that keep interplaying with each other. What's really cool about those surahs is that, like in some surahs, Allah will order those 5 or 6 subjects a certain way. In another surah, He'll order them a different way. And every time He reorders them, even though you might think at first glance it's talking the same way or it's making the same point, it's not. It's actually making a profoundly different point from other places. And it's teaching you something profoundly different and profoundly new every time. So at a surface reading, it seems like it's the same, but at a deeper look, it blows your mind how different it can be. And a really good example of that, if you guys, I do something called an in-depth series of the study of the Quran. It's on Bayyina.tv. And if you guys look at my study of Surah Al-Mulk and Surah Qaf, those 2 surahs, I spent an entire day teaching Mulk and an entire day, again, teaching Surah Qaf. It's recorded, it's posted on there. Then I think you'll get an idea you'll appreciate what the repetition does and how, even if you read translation of Qaf and Mulk, you might see a lot of similarities. Like, okay, it's talking about the afterlife, it's talking about the Quran, it's talking about revelation and belief in prophets, get it. But when you take a deeper look, you realize it's just profoundly different, unique, and really uniquely beautiful. And it's something that deserves attention. We should get in the habit of reading the Quran or exploring the Quran in depth. That is one of the most beneficial spiritual exercises a believer can do in their life. That's so beneficial for our hearts and our connection to Allah, is to try to engage deeply with the Quran. And I'm hoping I can help you guys with that, with the service I'm trying to provide with my team on Bayyina.tv.